Morning warriors, and welcome to episode 10 of Why Shy Why. Today's episode made itself. There were about 4 or 5 people that asked me about systems integration in the last week, and I thought, well, if it's going around, it's going around, and I've got to talk about it. So guys, today, if you're thinking about making system A talk to system B, and maybe system B talking back to system A, without a human in the middle of that, hang around because there's a couple of great tips for you. Alright, systems integration, let's get into it. So, systems integration is really just talking about getting your off-the-shelf products talking to each other, okay? So, a couple of examples that have come up in the last week. A customer portal on the web that needs to talk back to an ERP system that's only accessible by the company staff. There's a e-commerce ordering system on the web that needs to talk back to an accounting system to get rid of that data entry in between, where a human has to pull out the data from the e-commerce system and then push it into the accounting system. So there's many scenarios, but basically what happens is what you're trying to do is eliminate the human element, and the reason for that is because it's, well, one, slow, but also two, it brings in inaccuracies because we are all flawed and we all make mistakes, right? So that's the two reasons why you want to have systems integration in place. So when you are thinking about systems integration, the first and most important tip is probably also the hardest one to implement, and that is really about finding the happy medium between off-the-shelf and code, okay? Off-the-shelf systems will work fine logically, but it does bring on inherent risk. So if this is one of those things, for example, I was talking about ordering systems talking to the accounting system, that's quite a key business process in this company. And so we were not really in a position where we could risk that thing coming down. So what I was leaning towards was a full managed code solution which would allow us to handle that risk in the appropriate manner. I've seen systems where system A needs to talk to system B, but there's 6 hops in the way, and those 6 hops are different systems on the internet. And so if one of those things go down, the whole system breaks because it's the weakest link, right? So you have to think about what sort of risk am I willing to bear, and how much am I willing to invest? Because of course, if you pull risk off the table, you're putting cash down, right? That's how it works. Okay, number 2, if you are trying to make 2 systems talk to each other, the best way to do that is using an API, or application programming interface. An API, guys, is just a way, like, okay, so when we deal with software, we deal with it through a graphical user interface, right, with buttons and text boxes, and we type stuff in. An API is basically exactly the same thing. It allows for the same functionality to happen in the system, but for code to talk to it rather than a human talking to it, okay? So when you need code to interact with the system, that's basically called an API. Alright, so if you want these 2 systems to talk to each other, having APIs on both sides is going to be perfect. That is usually how, sometimes the only options you have when you're trying to make 2 systems talk to each other. If you have APIs on both sides, half the battle is won. All you need to do now is build something in the middle that's going to be really smart, take away that human element, and introduce a whole bunch of accuracy and quality into that process that won't fail. Also keep in mind that you need to build for volume, okay? So the whole idea behind this is that you want to be pushing through transactions through this systems integration pathway, or this channel. Because, I mean, let's face it, this stuff costs a lot of money, and so if you're only doing this 10 times a year, it's really not worth it. You can bring someone in to do it 10 times a year, and it'll cost you less, right? So you've got to think about high volume processes that are in place. Again, things like web orders to accounting systems is a really good example. Every time there's an order, you don't want someone to be waiting there, waiting. Oh, there's an order. Okay, let me type it in again. There's inaccuracy there. There's dormant labor time there. There's all sorts of inefficiencies there. Okay, and then number 3, guys, keep in mind this is custom code. So pretty much to everyone I've ever talked to in the last, say, 12 months, I tell you about the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule is you have only paid 20% of the overall cost of your widget when you go live. right? Because maintenance will cost another 80% on top of that. So keep that in mind, because that is the ongoing investment that you're going to have to push into this thing. All right, guys, that's it for me for systems integration. I hope I've sort of put a bit of light to those shadows. I know there's lots of scenarios out there, so if you have something specific you want us to think about and talk to you about, feel free to get in touch. There's a phone number at the end of this video. You can also comment or like, or get in touch with us through our website. All right, guys, I think that's it for now. I will leave you to those thoughts, and until next week, I hope that you stay focused.